Yo, what's up, everybody? This is the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast presented by Underdog Fantasy. We are back once again, man. Look, so many dope things coming up. I'm gonna run through all the announcements and giveaways and all that stuff early this time, so it's not super late. But I am Thomas Tipple FF. You can find me at Thomas Tipple FF on the Bird app. And no matter what happens tonight, the Blue Jays will be at least tied for first in the AL East.
Hi, I'm Billy. You can find me on, I don't know why I hit him with the hi. I feel like I'm auditioning for a high school play. I'm Billy. You can find me on Twitter at BigBillyFF. The Milwaukee Brewers continue to disappoint me.
Oh, fair. Yeah, rough. Hey, Yelich hit his first home run, though.
Yeah, grand slam.
My name is Jacob Sanderson. You can find me on Twitter at FF_RTDB. And I have not watched a full regular season baseball game on television in 4 years.
What? Really? I thought we watched. I'm pretty sure we watched.
I will watch playoffs for sure. And if I'm like out at if I'm out at like the bar, I'll vaguely pay attention. And if I'm ever traveling in America, in a city that has a baseball diamond, I will 100% go to watch a game live. But in terms of just like turning on my television and watching baseball, like, do you know how much time I already waste doing sports related things? Like, I watch so much freaking football. I watch so much freaking basketball. I watch not even that much, but I watch some hockey. And then I've got I can't do it, man. 162 games. Like I wish the Red Sox luck. If they're doing well, come about game 140, 150, I'll start tuning in for the last few innings and close games. And then I'll listen to like 10 podcasts in 2 days before the playoffs start to feel like I've caught up. And then I'll watch every game during the playoffs. But man, game 8 right now, God bless the people on my timeline like you that are just getting like hyped for what's happening in game 8 of a baseball regular season. It's ridiculous.
I find it amazing that you don't pay more attention, as it is the spreadsheet nerd's dream with all of the analytics that go into baseball.
Even when I'm retired, dude. Like if I had unlimited time, right? Like if I did not have any other responsibilities. Say that I pretend I had like really rich relative that I've never met. And then that relative died, and despite having never met me, they bequeathed me with $1 billion. Like, you know, in that universe, I would love to drop out of school, maybe, not work, not do much else, and then just devote myself to like playing DFS in all 4 major sports with my $1 billion. And then I would watch a lot of baseball. But I don't live in that
fair.
world.
No, it's fair. Look, I've missed one game this year, and I actually felt guilty for missing it. So that's just how I am, and that's why you guys are the football guys, and I just press these buttons and book things like giveaways. Which, guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but on the April 28th, day 1, this Thursday draft show, we have a Saquon Barkley signed jersey giveaway. Now, you're going to have to enter that one early. You can't enter that one the night of, even though that's when we are giving it away. But you got to take a picture, screenshot it, do the little video. I don't know how you guys pull that one off, but the screenshot videos are really dope to see. You get the ratings, the comments. That's on our Twitter account. Post them on our Twitter account or DM us. It's got to be of YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen. Doesn't matter where. Leave any sort of comment, review, rate, screenshot it, send it to us. You're entered. That's it. It started off really complicated for this giveaway, and then we simplified it for everyone. So it's simplified. That's all you got to do. Really easy. We're paying the shipping. It doesn't matter where you live. UK, Australia, US, Canada. We're paying for it. It's easy. Why wouldn't you you're already listening to the show. Just do this. And it gets you entered on draft night. That's not the only giveaway, though. Thanks to Trophy Smack being the presenting sponsor of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast draft night show, we have a fully customized Full Tilt Dynasty podcast championship belt to give away. This isn't a rinky-dinky, flimsy little metal thing. This is the full 6-pound championship belt that, again, we are paying the shipping cost to get it to you. And all you have to do is have the best comment of the night. You have 20 comments, that's not going to matter. Make sure you have the best one.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. If
Right?
you have
Like,
the
I mean,
best,
I'll take a lot of quality quantity too.
it's true. It's going to be really hard to decide. We'll likely announce that winner on the Friday, unless there's just a grandiose, super obvious winner on the
Might be
Saturday.
so good that we don't even need to talk it over. That should be your goal. If you're commenting, you should comment something so good that we don't even need to converse. We don't even need to have our tribal council. We can just immediately be like, yeah, this guy in the private chat.
That's it. 100%. So look,
Playing with emotions out here.
and that's not the thing, right? Trophy Smack is supplying with some other great swag as well that we will be sending out. Can't wait for that. Super dope. And guys, big guest announced last week, June 7th. JJ Zacharyson is going to be joining us, which I can't believe that that's happening, but it is happening. Yeah, luckily Jacob is an absolute superstar, and he brought us home. I've been trying to make that happen, like to get a hold of the man who's super busy, but luckily, Jacob, you're an absolute superstar.
I don't know, just maybe learn to be good. I don't know. I
don't know. Maybe I just need to learn how to tweet about nothing but target shares and route percentages for wide receivers and get noticed a little more. Look, guys, I think that's everything. I don't think we have anything else to talk about, really.
We don't really need to talk about this. I just want to talk about Ben McAdoo, fabled Twitter analyst, coming out today and saying Sam Darnold is their starting QB. Then 5 minutes later being like, I shouldn't have said that. We don't need analysis on that or anything. I just want to laugh on that because that's the funniest thing I've seen in a while.
The first thing I went to is like, one day I'm going to accidentally break attorney-client privilege in some hearing. And I'm going to be like, my client told me you only stabbed her twice. I'll be like, sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Strike that from the
Please
record.
Disregard that.
Objection. Other than that, I do want to touch on, it's not really news. It's just something that I learned about from friend of the show, Austin Gale, listening to the Tailgate podcast, where they had mentioned that the Raiders actually have an out on this Derrick Carr contract extension at the end of the year. That's a minimum cap penalty. Austin Gale seems to think that if they miss the playoffs, Derrick Carr is gone anyway, so extension doesn't matter. And his cohort on the podcast was kind of arguing against that they would be willing to pay him that $35 million a year. I just want to ask, because I was out here touting on the walkabout that no matter what, Derrick Carr is safe, locked in value. You should have been acquiring him the whole time. Should people actually be worried? We're obviously not contract experts. We're not Anand out here knowing everything there is to know. But after hearing this and kind of looking into it, are we actually concerned that the Raiders might get cold feet on Carr? Or do you think with Adams coming in and securing him in there, is he there for the next 4 years for sure?
Yeah. So I don't know as though it's considered. Oh, I guess it is considered. So in this contract, there's $23 million of guaranteed money, $24 million. And that's all guaranteed in the first year. So after that, they have no serious incentive to keep Derrick Carr on the roster. I'm not going to be scared of this. I'm really not, because I mean, what is Derrick Carr's worst case scenario?
They miss the playoffs every year. That contract
throws 4,000 yards, probably barely misses the playoffs like the Raiders always do. And I mean, it's Derrick Carr doesn't really have a bad season. So I don't think there's really a situation where they're going to be like, well, he only threw for 32 touchdowns and 4,000 yards, and we barely made the playoff. I just don't see a situation where this is so bad that they're like, yeah, we got to cut loose on this Derrick Carr contract.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think come next year we could all be like, wow, the Raiders still have Derrick Carr on contract. But I don't think I don't see a way that this goes so bad, especially after adding the best wide receiver in the league, that it just all goes to shit. Like, I don't see it happening.
I think he'll have at least 2 years with the Raiders. And then, I mean, his worst case scenario is that he just starts for a team that's not the Raiders. I mean, I can't envision a scenario any point in the next 4 years where he's not a starting quarterback in the National Football League. There aren't enough good quarterbacks for 32 spots. I mean, I think I could see a scenario like what happened to Matt Ryan potentially, where, he was in a really great spot. Everything kind of atrophied around him. And eventually, it didn't make sense for them to keep him any longer. And he ends up starting somewhere else. So, maybe that happens for Carr after a couple of years if they don't achieve what they want to achieve. But I think it's only a minimal risk because he's in the best position he's ever been in terms of weapons right now. So it can pretty much only get worse from here. But I definitely think he's at least safe for a couple of years with the situation, and we'll see if he can make the most of it. He has a pretty incredible opportunity with Adams and Waller and Billy's favorite accountant.
I was just going to say, come 2023, his dead cap is $5.6 million.
That's what I mean. When you look at his cap hit, right? 32 million, 41 million, 41 million. I can see a situation where the Raiders all of a sudden are sitting at 16 next year in the draft, looking to maybe get one of these quarterbacks. If they do miss the playoffs that badly, they only win, let's say they do the most Raiders thing ever and they win 6 games with this team, even with everyone healthy. Just for fun, let's say they win 6 games, finish 4th in their division. You don't think they're looking at that 23 quarterback class and kind of looking at a $5 million dead cap and going,
they should be, but they should be. But I mean, nothing that the Raiders did this offseason makes any sense to me.
True,
I mean,
okay.
They went all in on 2 pair. They have the 4th best team in their own division, and they decided to sign Chandler Jones and trade a first for Devontae Adams and give I don't think that anything that they did was optimal. I think that the optimal strategy would have been keeping their 1st round pick and 2nd round pick, not tying up a bunch of cap on an aging edge rusher, trading Derrick Carr to a team for probably another 1st plus, and then tanking the crap out of this year and then building around the 2023 class. But that's not what they chose to do. I think they're pretty populated.
Sure. Okay. That's fair. I just want for the people to maybe understand that there might be some caution for me sitting here saying like Derek Carr should be a number 1 buy priority.
Yeah. Sorry, we can move on after this. I just want to read off this list because I just found it. Top 10 quarterbacks in 2022 by base salary rankings is Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Derek Carr, Jared Goff, Tom Brady. That is a rough top 10 among quarterbacks.
That's the top 10 list for this year.
Yep. I will drop it in chat right now just so y'all can tell them.
Oh my God. What's the worst one on that? Well, okay. Outside of Sam Darnold, what's the worst one on that list? Maybe Garoppolo. Tannehill being number 1. Oh man. Trade your Ryan Tannehill shares this year, folks. Oh my God. Other than that, anything you really want to talk about? I know you were talking about the Chris Sims top 5 in the Discord that's being built, actually, folks. So there's that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But Chris Sims top 5 running backs. Billy, you seemed pretty dejected at the list. What stands out to you the most there?
All right, look. Chris Sims knows more about football than I ever will, and I'm not going to deny that fact. That's
big of you to mention. Lots of people out there won't do that.
I know that's a hot take to say that Chris Sims knows more football than I do, but
the person who makes the best argument against Chris Sims knowing more about football than randoms on Twitter is Chris Sims.
Yeah. So this is a couple days old at this point. This came out, and I went to his podcast feed and I scrolled to the RB rankings because I remember last year Javian Hawkins was his RB3 in the class.
Kellen Mond.
And it's like he completely just went the opposite direction. And he's like, anyone below 200 pounds doesn't count. Like he just went the opposite direction. So now it's Ty Davis Price, who I haven't heard about since the season ended. I thought he was going back to LSU.
What are these running back rankings? I've only seen his ridiculous wide receiver rankings. He's doing running backs now too?
Yeah, it's in the Discord.
Kenneth Walker 1, Brees
I was
2, Damian Pierce 3, James Cook 4, and Ty Davis Price number 5.
Yeah, those are rankings.
Hey,
And
one up for James Cook, baby.
hey, to his defense, he came out and said Kenneth Walker is the best prospect he's seen in a very long time.
That seems like some good news for me being not a Kenneth Walker person.
Like, we
hear.
don't have to harp on Chris Sims picks. I know this is a long running joke of like picking on Chris Sims rankings. I will say a couple things in his defense. He does not care about consensus, and he says it with his chest.
Well, I'll give him this. I mean, he has the right two backs at the top. He's got whatever Hall and Walker. I mean, he's also ranked from an NFL perspective. He doesn't give a shit about fantasy football. I honestly have zero problem with Walker ranked at 1 from an NFL perspective.
Sure.
Like the NFL does not count PPR scoring. So I have no issue with that. And then I don't know, beyond that, RB3 and later, it's a total shit show. Sure. Tyrion Davis-Price. Why not?
That's so funny. We got Lucas in the chat at the Cute Hurts over on Twitch. Does it make you feel better or worse that he is so high on James Cook? We're not talking about that. I gave a fist pump for it. And
Lucas going for the neck.
Not really going to talk about much of anything else on that. Okay, guys, we're at number 5 on our list. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into number 5 on the list. This is where the fun stuff really starts, in my opinion. There have been a couple of changes, I think, overall for us here, but we'll address that post-draft. We're getting these consensus rankings were made 3-4 weeks ago, and we've been running them off. So if you're wondering why some players are where they are, that might be why. Other than that, we're going to do a quick clip here. When we come back, we are definitely going to get into our number 5 here.
Do I use the bar graph? Yes. Is that my only process? No. And it's like with Leonard Fournette. Does he have pretty bad advanced metrics? Absolutely. Do I still draft a lot of Leonard Fournette and value him generally above consensus? Absolutely. And it's because there's other factors at play. So I think that's what I would say to all the people that are like, oh, it's just a bar graph. No, I will not be prisoner to the bar graph.
And I think that's important. Perception to that is really, really important.
I think we all chose to grow our facial hair out at the same time.
Yeah. Well, Jacobs is.
Yeah.
He's trying.
I mean, it's the funny thing. I remember I did the Movember last year for a show with Dave and Cody and Josh, and I mean it was pretty pitiful. And then it's also blonde, so like I remember like they were like, "You don't have anything," and then I like went up to the mic. I was like this. They were like, "Oh my god, you have a little bit," and then it's just
it's not for all of us. That was our show with now FTN employee Josh Larkey, and one thing we asked Josh and Austin Gale, 2 people who worked at 2 places that get scrutinized a lot for their, the thing that they're known for with Player Profiler, it's the bar graph, and at PFF, it's the PFF grade. And both of them said the same thing. These aren't things to live and die by. So if these people who are entrenched in their companies' workings, it's important if they understand that. You as a fantasy player should understand that. There's more to that. So very important lessons. Number 5 on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast rookie countdown, consensus number 5 for us, Treylon Burks. Look, this is a guy who early in the process was DK Metcalf. Then he somehow became slower than molasses, tier of his own. Then all of a sudden, not inside the top 5. It's been up and down on Traylen Burks. But let's go through it. In 2019, as a freshman, 29 receptions, 475 yards, no touchdowns. Not bad. The 2020 weird COVID season, 9 games played, dominated, 51 catches, 820 yards, 7 touchdowns. He also had 15 carries for 75 yards. That's important. And then Arkansas in his junior year, 12 games played, 66 receptions, 1,104 yards, 11 touchdowns, receiving, 14 carries for 112 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground. And of course, the one thing a lot of people like to talk about with Burks is the game against Alabama where he dominated, and there was no one else on Arkansas for Alabama to really defend. A lot of people want to talk about his 40 time. I just want to mention that I personally think that the issue with his 40 time and why he's perceived as being just, completely off and out of the top 5 for people because of his 4.55 40. It was Twitter's mistake for believing that the man could run 4.3. Like, he got so hyped up when that report came out, or I can't even remember who said it, but when somebody said it, they took that as like, this is definitely happening. And then all of a sudden we were let down. That's shows you what the combine can do. Jacob, I want to start with you, or I should call you Trevor. I want to start with you. How do you feel about Traylen Burks now? I know you're in the Bulletproof Discord with Drew, who loves to mock the Traylen Burks tier of his own people. But where do you stand?
Yeah, well, he's not a tier of his own, that's for sure. But he's a really good wide receiver prospect in this class. I think that this whole athleticism boomerang is kind of interesting because before the combine, a lot of the conversations I had with folks were saying, okay, he's in this tier of his own because of the athleticism. That's what separates him from a Drake London. That's what separates him from a Garrett Wilson. This is the size and athleticism. And I mean, I care about size and athleticism like a little bit at wide receiver, not nearly as much as I do at running back or at tight end. And we've talked about that before. So I never really saw him in that tier of his own. About midway through or coming into this college season, I thought he was my wide receiver 1, and he was for most of that. I ended up switching to London shortly after the college season. And then since the combine and since reading some more about him, I've moved him down to my wide receiver 3 behind London and Wilson, who will be the latter 2 we'll talk about today. But he still is in that top tier. That's because his production profile, taking away all the athleticism and everything else that were the bells and whistles, is fantastic. He's a guy who in 3 years, 2 years, way above the threshold. He was over 40% receiving yards market share this year, up over 3 yards per team pass attempt. It's everything that you want to see out of a wide receiver prospect in the SEC. It's fantastic. And then you look at recent prospects that have profiled a similar way, 22-year-old early declares, with 2+ seasons over top 24 thresholds and yards per team pass attempt. I mean, it's gone really well recently. It's like Demaryius Thomas, A.J. Brown, Will Fuller, Golden Tate, Alshon Jeffrey, DK Metcalf. Like it's a really, really strong list. You have to go back earlier to start finding misses in that profile, like a Troy Williamson or a Justin Blackman. So I like Burks.
Oh, Blackman.
The reason why I think that he's a little bit behind the other 2 is just based on the usage. So, he got a lot of gadgety usage, rushing, slot work. You see in the reception perception profile, for instance, and for anyone that's not subscribed to Matt Harmon's work, I won't go and read everything out, but it's not good. It paints a picture of a wide receiver who doesn't win consistently on the outside in a way that other top wide receivers with comparable production profiles do. And when you don't have that incredible athleticism, it makes me less certain that kind of gadgety usage is going to translate to the NFL. Because if he had come out and ran a 4.3, then I'm looking at this and say, okay, yeah, whatever. Maybe he's not the most refined route runner, but if he's 6'3", 225, runs a 4.3, they'll figure it out somehow. I'm just not entirely sure that a team will cater their entire offense around him like Arkansas did when he's not that special athlete, but I still think he's an incredible prospect.
To that, actually, Billy, we're going to go to you, and then I'll make my point on why I care a little bit less about all that. Not all that.
All right. I really like Traylen Burks. Obviously, we all like him pretty well. He's in our top 5. But like everything I want to say about Treylon Burks, Jacob kind of tackled pretty well. I know I don't mean to give you too much credit. Your ego's already big enough. But Treylon Burks is, I said very early on in these shows that there's a lot of the same guy in this draft class, it feels like. And Treylon Burks feels like one of the few guys that isn't the same guy. Like there's very few guys in this class that fit the mold of like the Julio Jones alpha. There's a lot of the Tyreek Hill alpha where it's you're just better than every guy on the field. You hope they are, and then they're going to run away with the ball. but there's a lot less of that guy that's just going to punch you in the face and, beat you for every ball in your vicinity. And Treylon Burks is one of those guys, and he did it in the SEC. He had a great amount of production. He was very valuable to Arkansas. Obviously, it was Arkansas, but still produced against really good teams in the SEC and against NFL talent, which is something that, is a direct knock against a lot of the guys that we've talked about, Christian Watson, Sky Moore, who aren't facing guys who you're going to see on a cereal bowl or a cereal box someday. But all that comes back to say Treylon Burks is one of the few guys in this class who is above 6'2", above 220 pounds at the wide receiver position that was severely successful at the college level. And he was extremely successful. Every year he was in college, he was producing pretty well. I mean, his freshman year was pretty good for a freshman. So all this is coming down to say his team valued him as a player that should get the ball. And I think the NFL is going to do that too. And I think, there was a bit of a correction that a lot of people saw. I personally didn't. I'll take the shot on that. I thought he was going to run faster. But I think there was kind of an overcorrection after his 40 time, and he moved lower than he probably should have. So, I mean, there's rumors that Burks is falling to the Packers at 22. God, what happens if Jameson Williams and Treylon Burks get to the Packers and they don't pick either of them?
I don't think Williams is going to make it, though. Williams, I don't know if you've seen this, but we'll talk more about this tomorrow night with Chase, and we're doing draft props, but Jameson Williams, who was once plus 700 to
number
be the
one
first wide receiver off the board, is now plus 170. And his odds have been reduced by half in the last 48 hours. Peter Schrager released his mock with him as the first wide receiver off the board. At this point, I think it's like it's somewhere in the neighborhood of possible to likely that Jameson is the first wide receiver.
Even as early as the Jets, which I found pretty incredible.
Burks, though, isn't this going to be crazy how we've had this, like, everybody entered the offseason with Burks as the clear-cut wide receiver one. Then he's fallen from, like, okay, he's in a group of wide receiver ones to now he's like maybe the wide receiver 3. And then he's going to go to the Packers or Chiefs, and then immediately he's the clear-cut wide receiver 1 again.
Like, I was just gonna ask you about that, because for me, like, is it London anywhere or Treylon Burks in Arizona, Green Bay, Kansas City? Like, is it one of those situations, or are you?
Drake London will be my wide receiver 1 regardless.
Okay. Well, I just want to point out that Ryan Wilson 9 hours ago mocked Traylen Burks to the Green Bay Packers. That's Ryan Wilson of CBS. Mocked him at 22 to the Packers.
I think right now in mocks, there's a lot of, we really want to send a fun wide receiver to the Packers, so we're going to let one fall a little bit.
He actually has the Packers drafting 2. Treylon Burks at 22, Chris Olave at 28.
I'd love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that I'm just thinking, because I think for me personally, one of the reasons I wasn't so worried about him not being able to win on the outside is I think the NFL shifting to accepting slot receivers more. I mean, running out 3 wide receiver sets is becoming more and more popular every week in the NFL. So I think that a guy like Burks, if he goes to, say, Arizona and he takes Christian Kirk's role, I mean, he's a 6'2", 225 Christian Kirk, and the Alabama game really led me to believe he can separate at least a little bit in space. So I think it would be really hard for me not to reach on him if he lands in those spots. Well, anything else for our boy Treylon Burks? Are we ready to go to number 4? Let me just, before you start.
Good player, fun player. Really excited to see the landing spot. I think he is, if any wide receiver is landing spot dependent in the class, I think Burks is. And not just in terms of like good offense, bad offense, but I think he needs a creative offensive coordinator. Like, I think that we've seen, I don't want to bring up a sore subject for this podcast, but like, we've seen what happens when an unrefined, raw, after the catch athlete lands with the worst coach imaginable in Laviska Shenault 2021. And I would like to see Treylon Burks land with not a bad coach.
Lucas is
Tom, we were in sync on
I
that.
know.
That was a gorgeous moment. That was beautiful.
why am I
Lucas, you're
rooting-
watching clip of that.
why am I rooting for wide receivers to fall to the Packers and they not draft him? Well, Lucas, it's because we want to see Billy have a mental breakdown on show, not for his mental health, but for the content.
Remember
that's what we're
earlier
waiting
when you
for.
made me a mod in the Discord and I was like, "Can I ban Lucas?" And Lucas was like, "What did I do?" This is what you did.
This is why.
I knew this was coming.
For
Anyway,
me, there are two players to me where landing spots matter, and it just matter the most for me. And it just so happens that the other one happens to be number 4 on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast consensus rankings. Garrett Wilson of Ohio State. Jacob, I'm going to kick it to you early here.
No, you have to let Billy go first because I stole his points last time and he got
Oh,
mad.
fair.
Plus, if I
Billy's
make sure
doing
Billy
the
goes
Ohio
first on this
State
one,
thing.
then I get to talk about my favorite player in the next one. So
I'm trying to
play
figure
this
out
out.
what Jacob
Jesus.
just did. You did that so flawlessly.
I was
Oh,
making a G and then a W.
I know, but you did it so well. Like my mind and my hands don't work together like that.
Oh my
Anyway.
gosh, Billy, Garrett Wilson. How do you feel about him? And what do you think his reason for being number 4 is? I got lost there for a second.
I think probably my favorite thing about Garrett Wilson is I know it's not easy to do. I think it's pretty likely that Garrett Wilson is getting drafted by the Falcons. I think that's a pretty if he's there, which
Hate to see it.
I think that's where Garrett Wilson is going.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, God help him at that point. But like
A lot of targets though. A lot of vacated targets in Atlanta.
Am I Marcus Mariota. I was gonna say, am I not remembering something? It is funny how similar he is to Calvin Ridley in my mind. Just 7 years younger coming out. Like it makes so much sense. He fits the mold really well, and they win in really similar ways. Garrett Wilson's big thing, and you'll read it on any draft website, draft prospect website. The thing that Garrett Wilson does arguably better than anyone else in this class is route running. He's fast. He's really quick to turn his hips when he's running specific routes. He can burn a lot of NFL talent at the cornerback position. So all this is to say that Garrett Wilson legitimately has that capability to succeed in those ways in the NFL that we've seen carry players to long careers. Like the way he works, he's not someone who's going to lose his speed or lose a few inches on his vertical. So all that's to say, I really like Garrett Wilson. He played in a really good offense in college for the wide receiver position. I mean, we're seeing 2 of them next year. We're probably going to be talking about one on this show next year from Ohio State.
Guaranteed we are. It's going to be hard not to have him in the number 1 spot already.
There's so many competitors, though, dude. Like, I don't even know. I can't even say.
He's a wide receiver that's deep as the number 1. You're going to have him at that spot. I
don't know if that's Bijan, though. Anyway, let's not step on next year's content.
Garrett Wilson, he really feels like Chris Olave times like 1.1. Like, he just feels like 10% more than Chris Olave. And I feel bad saying that, but like his profile is just that much better. So I think it comes down to just saying this is just a better version of what we talked about with Chris Olave. And I think there's a lot of good to him. I think he has a long NFL career ahead of him, provided he can stay healthy, which isn't really a concern with him. And he succeeded in a great offense in college against NFL talent. So all that's to say, a lot of these guys at the top were on a razor thin margin. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between Burks and Wilson, but I think he's a good player that should be up this high.
Well, we're projecting him to go really high in the draft, inside the top 10, like you said, likely 8 to Atlanta. Has been seen a lot in mock drafts, and he's one of those players that seem to have had one of the stickiest landing spots when it comes to general mock drafting from the trusted talking heads on the interwebs. As a freshman, 30 receptions, 432 yards, 5 touchdowns as a freshman, which I think is really dope. And of course, COVID shortened season in 2020, only 8 games, but 43 receptions, 723 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Important to note, he increased his receptions and his yards and had one more touchdown in 5 fewer games, which is kind of gnarly. In 2021, 11 games, 70 receptions, 1,058 yards, and 12 touchdowns. This is on a team with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Chris Olave, amongst others. But he is a Big Ten wide receiver. So, Jacob, does him playing in the Big Ten change anything for you when it comes to the history of Big Ten wide receivers, or are you just totally comfortable no matter what?
I mean, the history of Ohio State wide receivers has largely been positive, even ones with questionable profiles like a Michael Thomas or a Terry McLaurin, who became big hits. So I'm certainly happy to draft an Ohio State wide receiver. I'm pretty fired up about Wilson. I think the big reason is we've been debating these Alabama wide receivers for a couple of years now in analytical circles. And often, you get into these arguments of, okay, this guy's profile has all these holes, but how can you blame them because there were these guys around them and, trying to weigh out all this target competition and everything. And Garrett Wilson came out as a 20-year-old in his second year and just eliminated the need for that kind of conversation. He has the highest yards per team pass attempt in year 2 among all the wide receivers in any sort of consideration for the top 2 rounds of the draft. He had an absolutely dominant production profile, really until this year, where he took a little bit of a step back, missed a couple games, and Jackson Smith, Najiba really, really elevated. But I have really no issues with Wilson. He seems like kind of the consensus wide receiver 1. He seems like the guy that the least number of people in either the analytical or film or draft community, whatever sphere, I don't really know anybody that has a particularly strong take against Garrett Wilson. So he's basically checks all the boxes that we want. He did it next to 2 other first-round picks, one being his teammate this year and then one being JSN next year. I think the only thing that maybe holds me back from him versus the next player is just that I like the next player more, and I'll talk about him in a second. But I like Garrett Wilson quite a lot. He fits the modern-day NFL to a T in terms of what you want your wide receivers to be, and I'm really excited to draft him.
I think he's I think I've watched him the least out of the wide receivers on this list, to be honest with you. And sometimes, even when I did watch him, I had this small feeling that he was kind of getting lost on my TV screen or on my computer screen while I was watching, which feels weird to say. I think I was the lowest on Wilson out of our group, and I do have concerns his size, and he definitely looked like he got outplayed by Jigba as well, and sometimes Olave, honestly. But again, that wide receiver room was super freaking competitive. So a lot of questions with Wilson, but Jacob, you wanted first dibs on our next player for a reason. You love him. I love him. He is my wide receiver 1 at the time of this rankings when these were decided. The number 3 player on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast consensus rankings this year, and the wide receiver 1 out of USC, Mr. Drake London. Jacob, obviously, with a name like London, he's going to be strong and tough. 6'5", unbelievably big, 6'5", 210. Don't care that he's slow in his I almost said his rookie year. Oh my gosh. His freshman season in 8 games, 39 receptions, 567 yards, 5 touchdowns. Very good. This is at USC in the Pac-12. So say what you will about Pac-12 wide receivers. In his sophomore year in 2020, 6 games, 33 receptions, 502 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So a little bit down in his sophomore year. And then the junior year. What an unbelievable season. 8 games, 88 receptions. That is a lot in 8 games.
That's a lot.
1,084 yards, only 7 touchdowns, but he also had a quarterback that was out to have murdered every single week. But 8 games, 11 receptions a week. He's so good. I'm doing math on the podcast. No one has me doing math on the podcast like that. Jacob at 6'5", 210. He's obviously a monster, but people are really hammering home the N'Keal Harry comps on the interwebs. Why do you just not care at that?
Yeah, so this Drake London has been one of the guys that I talk about by far the most on Twitter. He is my wide receiver 1 in this class. I am with our full tilt consensus for sure. Here's where I really get lost in this contested catch debate, is that it's often been presented in terms of percentages. So X players have had X percentage of contested catches. And you look at that list of the players with the high percentages, and it features a lot of misses. On one end, it features guys like N'Keal Harry, Jalen Reagor, who otherwise profiled as pretty strong prospects, especially Harry. And, it's easy to get concerned. But you look at some of the rest of this list, it's commonly put out there as these high percentage of contested catch guys. And it's guys like Denzel Mims, who was a late producer, late declare. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, late producer, late declare. Tylan Wallace ended up going in the 4th round. Hakeem Butler ended up going in the 4th round. To me, what I want to know is this contested catch stuff telling us anything that other things aren't? Or is it telling us why bad prospects are bad? Because outside of Harry, there's a lot of other reasons to find issues in these guys' college profiles ahead of time beyond they don't separate. You dig in, London is going to be drafted in round 1. He might be the first wide receiver drafted off the board, maybe second, maybe third, maybe fourth, who knows? He's going to be drafted in round 1, probably in the top half of round 1. So the NFL is deemed either that he can separate plenty fine, or he's so good at other things that they don't care. And the other issue that I have with these separation, contested catch percentages as a proxy for separation is that it makes no sense to me to focus on the percentage of contested catches. Because if what you're saying is that for some reason contested catches are less translatable, they're worth less, then I think what you should really be doing is looking at what's remaining in the production and then eliminating out the contested catches. People have done this with screens. People have built models where they take away receptions and yards from screens. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but people have done that. You could do a similar thing with contested catches. And what you find is that Drake London actually hits all the meaningful thresholds on a per game basis for yards per team pass attempt, receiving yards market share, college dominator, whatever stat you want to use. If you simply take all of his catches, contested catches away, he hits it by a mile. And that's without even taking into account that if you were to do this, you have to take them away for everybody. So if Drake London never caught a single contested target, he would have been second in America in receptions per game last year. He can do a lot more than just catch contested balls. And let me tell you, he can sure catch a contested ball. He's definitely the wide receiver I've watched the most on film, in addition to loving his production stats. But he's a guy where, his ability to create separation is a bit different than what you're going to see out of a twitchy guy like Garrett Wilson. I mean, like you just mentioned, he's a freaking monster. He was listed 6'5", 210. He weighed in 6'3", 219. That's a guy who's obviously not going to have the quick twitch agility of a guy who's 5'10", 180. It's not going to happen. So what he does do is you can see the basketball background, because he's very, very smart about how he uses his leverage. He's running these go routes down the field. He's one of the most effective receivers in the country on deep routes, despite probably be having more like 4.6 speed, because he's just trailing guys and he's able to use his body control. He knows that he's bigger. He knows that he's smarter than the DBs he's going up against. And he's constantly able to open up just enough separation that he's going to have the leverage to be able to find the ball. And that's what we see a lot of in the NFL. We see these guys, like imagine him on the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he lasts that long, but you think of how he's able to throw these back shoulder throws to spots, and guys are able to use their bodies to position themselves. That's a lot of what we've seen out of professional NFL wide receivers. And whether that's 5 yards of separation in the context of NFL windows, that is separation. You don't get to be Jameson Williams all that often in the NFL running 10 yards away from NFL professional corners. You have to be able to maximize small windows of separation. And you look into guys like Matt Harmon who have charted him. London performs really, really well in a completely different class than Treylon Burks in terms of his ability to create separation on his routes and win routes. I'm not worried about London's separation at the next level. I love the production profile. I think the upside, given his size, is massive. And I think that that's ultimately what puts him just a tick ahead of Wilson. I think they're both complete wide receivers who win in different ways, can win inside and outside. I just think generally, if I'm shooting for that top five ceiling, I probably prefer the larger quote unquote alpha. But I think all the receivers we've talked about are excellent. And London just happens to be my favorite of the bunch.
No, man, I really don't think anyone could have hit that better than you did. I don't think I'm as worried about like a 4.6 40 in the NFL as maybe I used to be. Billy, anything to add on our boy Drake London?
Yeah, like I was saying previously, a lot of the I gotta get over Lucas here.
I got you. I got you.
A lot of the commentary that we're going to have at the top of this wide receiver class is pretty much pick your favorite. Which one of these guys fits your archetype of player more? Some people are going to like Treylon Burks. Some people are going to like Garrett Wilson. Some people are going to like Jameson Williams. Some people are going to like Drake London more. I have no problem. If you came to me right now and showed me your rankings and you had any four of those guys as your wide receiver one, I'm not going to debate you.
Wan'Dale Robinson.
Nope. I will debate that pretty hotly. But I'm not going to debate that too hotly. If you have one of those four guys as your wide receiver one, I think that's completely fair and viable. Drake London produced, he was the best player in his conference in his final year for sure. Probably in his second to last year. He's in his two logged years, 2020 and 2021. He was top 5 in receptions, receiving yards, yards from scrimmage, receiving touchdowns, all that. Won the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year in 2021. Like he is recognized by these Power 5 conferences as a legitimate good player. And that's what you want to see out of these guys. And it also is worth noting that they have a quarterback that was getting touted as potentially the QB1 in this class. And now that he's been losing some wide receivers lately, I don't think Keaton Slovis is that good. I think a lot of people are going to say that. I don't think Keaton Slovis is that good.
Yeah, but he's throwing on like my favorite guy in the 23 class. Not like I have JSN ahead, but Addison's just sort of like my guy. And I've 2 straight years I have to like root for my favorite wide receiver getting Keaton Slovis passes.
No, it's
follows me around, transferring from one coast to another.
So all this is to come down to say one of my favorite things that Drake London showed is he can work as the guy on a team. Like other teams knew the ball is going to Drake London. He had 11 receptions per game his senior year, which is insane, or his junior year. So I think there's so much good going into Drake London, and he's shown his ability to hold up as the focal point of an offense. I think that's phenomenal to see. So I think it's completely fine which one of these guys you have as your favorite. Jacob, I think it's completely fine that Drake London is your favorite. He personally isn't mine, but I think he's a phenomenal player, and he's going to do great in the NFL.
Yeah, and I really use the same word you did, which is favorite, in the sense that, yeah, he is my favorite because like I said, I really don't have an issue with people with Wilson at wide receiver one. I do think Burks and Williams like accept a little, because Wilson's your one, correct? Or am I wrong on that?
Prior to this, Burks was my one.
Okay, well, who is it today?
I need to go back and do these. It's probably going to be Jameson Williams.
Is it Jameson Williams? Okay, I do think Williams and Burks like bring in a little bit more risk than necessary, but I definitely would not be surprised if either of those ends up being the top wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, and as Lucas was saying here, I had to make sure my mic was on there for a minute. God damn. He's in the chat. Jacob's Twitter feed has made me a believer in London. I wish that I felt better about him after the catch.
Hey, he was number 1 in the nation this year in forced missed tackles per reception.
Yeah.
Granted, he got a lot of screen passes, so I think there's some noise with that stat. But he's definitely like good in the open field. I wouldn't be worried about him after the catch. I don't think he's like Burks, and he's not twitchy, but like he's a pretty big bully after the catch. He makes people miss.
Look, our number 2 player. It's coming down to the wire here, folks. It makes me sad a little bit that we're almost at the end, but that just means one thing. The draft is around the corner. But our number 2 player on the
Our
Full Tilt
first
Dynasty,
number one.
our, our Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, number 2 player on the consensus top 20 list for us is a prospect that's getting a little bit of heat for being a little bit reckless behind the line of scrimmage. It is quarterback prospect, 6'1", 220 pounds, that doesn't have baby hands, soon to be 23-year-old quarterback from Liberty, Malik Willis, the absolute freak of an athlete from Liberty. Didn't do much at Auburn in his first 2 seasons. Attempted 7 passes per year in his age 18 and age 19 season. But his age 21 season, he played in 10 games, had 265 pass attempts, threw for 2,250 yards, 64% completion, had 20 touchdown passes. He did throw 6 interceptions, but more importantly to fantasy, he rushed for 944 yards in only 10 games. In his age 22 season, 13 games, 339 attempts, 2,057 yards, 61% completion, 27 touchdowns, but doubled those interceptions to 12 and had fewer rushing yards at 878, and definitely takes a lot of sacks that he doesn't have to. The dude gets beat up behind the line of scrimmage. Kind of touted as a one look and go type player who thinks he has more speed than he actually does. So far, those have been the top 2 comments that I've seen on the timeline. I've seen comps to everything from Jalen Hurts to Josh Dobbs on the TL. Whoever wants to go first, go for it. Billy, go for it, homie. Malik Willis.
So I'm going to spoil what the first line of Jacob's thing. When we originally did these rankings, me and Jacob were the only people that had Malik Willis as our number 1. Everyone else had the next player we're going to talk about, who I'm not going to spoil, but I think we all know who it is.
I wonder who it could be.
Yeah, Ty Davis Price. But
if the price is right.
So all this is to say, but Malik Willis is probably the only quarterback in this draft, in my opinion, that has top 5 quarterback fantasy-wise upside. Like, he has this beautiful deep ball. We all saw the clip on Twitter. We saw the same clip from the 5 guys last year doing the exact same pass. But this year it was the first one that came out, so we all got to be excited about Malik Willis. And then his running production in college was insane. I mean, pushing 1,000 yards at Liberty 2 years in a row is crazy. Unfortunately, playing at Liberty, he's going to have the exact same knocks that Zach Wilson had, that he didn't really play anyone. But all this comes down to say Malik Willis produces as a rusher, looks good enough as a passer that even like those weird kinks that he may have can probably get coached out. My biggest fear with Malik Willis is I'm terrified he has the NFLer in a high school symptom with his college stats. Like, when you look at his college stats, he really looks like he was the best player on the field. And they're like, all right, Malik, just go play football. I mean, a lot was getting made of his character at the combine in a good sense. Like, he seems like the guy that if you want to build around, he could be one of the better ones. I know Kenny Pickett is probably by now the favorite to go the number 1 quarterback off the board. And I think that's just based on NFL readiness and teams wanting to save their job. But Malik Willis, just everything breaks well for him. And I think he kind of has this large range of outcomes that both includes like number 1 quarterback in the league in fantasy, but also could include like QB 25 seasons if he can't get around and rush as well as he's hoping to. But all this is to say, I expect good things from Malik Willis. Obviously, he was my number 1 pick for this draft. And yeah, that's about all I got. Jacob?
Well, it really, to me, comes down to risk tolerance, because most of the debates I have about Malik Willis actually have very little to do with like what we think of Malik Willis as a prospect. Like, Drew and I have gone back and forth on Malik like a zillion times. I'm sure we'll continue to. And for the most part, people that I've debated with, like I said, don't really disagree on the inputs. I think everybody agrees he's an incredible rushing quarterback. I think everybody expects he'll probably rush for a lot of yards in the NFL. And I don't think anyone out there pretends as though he is a perfectly polished passing prospect. I think really what it comes down to is depending on sort of what metrics you look at. Maybe you think he's somewhere on the more promising side. Other people think he's a little bit more hopeless. And then it comes down to, you know, how much do you think we're actually able to evaluate college passers as prospects in the NFL, right? How certain do you think that we can actually be? And then it comes down to, you know, your risk tolerance and what you see as a relative impact in your fantasy leagues. And so I'm honestly, like, I have, I think, 4 101s right now across my leagues. I currently plan to take Breece Hall in 2 of them and Malik Willis in 2 of them. So I'm pretty open-minded about this slot. I think where I can make the best case for Malik is that his ceiling is something Breece Hall really can't touch. We know that Malik Willis will run. If Malik Willis is a above average passer, right? I don't think anyone would say, maybe Tom, if he's feeling really homery and he's had a few drinks, but for the most part, I don't think anyone would say that Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson are elite NFL passers, but they are without a doubt elite NFL fantasy quarterbacks because they have become very serviceable to above average to good passers. And when you couple that with Malik's rushing production, you're pretty much locked into a top 6 superflex asset. And you're locked into that for like as long as they're a quarterback. So potentially 8, 10, 12 years. There's nothing Breece Hall can do that can match that. There's nothing he can do that can possibly match that. There's nothing Jonathan Taylor can do to match that. If Malik Willis hits, he's an irreplaceable asset. And then the floor is if he gets the top half of the first round draft capital, which seems likely, not assured, but likely, he's probably starting for a while. 76% of the quarterbacks the last 15 years that have gone in the top 15 of the draft start for 3+ years. 83% get at least 2+ years. So,
Right.
Oof, Josh Rosen.
If you're getting 3 years of Malik Willis as a floor, you get the opportunity to evaluate him while he scores points for your roster, right? Even if he's not coming together as a passer, you're probably at least getting a high-end QB2. Even borderline disasters like a Daniel Jones first year or Lamar Jackson rookie year when he really was not adding much passing to his game when he started in the second half of his rookie season. Vince Young, his rookie year. Guys that were really adding nothing in the passing game, they were still high-end QB2. So that's still useful in Superflex. And then you get to see, okay, is this guy good? Maybe he is, maybe not. We'll find out. Is there a scenario you can't flip Willis? This is perfect. This is kind of where I'm going. I think there's a scenario, certainly. But I think that it's most likely that he's going to retain most of his value. I think even if he looks bad, he's going to be scoring points when he gets in there. And he's going to hold his value, you know, at least for the first couple of years while people are able to figure out if this guy's going to be a long-term starter or not. So I think the floor is solid. And then, you know, the difference is with a Breece Hall, it's like, to me, the bar on him is so much higher. He doesn't have to just be pretty good as a passer to be elite. He doesn't have to just hold a job. He has to be freaking elite. Because if he's not an elite running back, then he's, you know what? Then he's Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, all the guys that are good that we don't really worry about too much for all that much in fantasy until the middle rounds. So that's why Malik Willis ends up there for me. There are elements to his passing game I think that you can look at. His adjusted yards per attempt is fine. His ratio actually of big-time throws to turnover-worthy plays is actually quite good. He really throws at a high depth of target, which is going to be helpful for fantasy and potentially explain some of his inefficiency. I like Malik, and he's a gamble that I think I'm willing to take. And if your risk tolerance is high, then maybe you'll join me on the Malik Willis train at 101 or at least 102.
I think Chase wants to come in and fight you on Malik Willis here. He's asking for the link. Oh my gosh. For Billy, anything to add on Malik?
Nah, I did my part on Malik Willis. I think he's a great player. I think him or the guy him or Breece Hall, it's completely reasonable. Whichever.
Breece Hall's number 1? Who wrote this shit? Look,
Richard Ford.
My concern with Malik is this: that he goes to a team that's not stable, and
Yeah.
I think that will be, if he goes to a team that's not stable, he plays in year 1 and his coach gets fired and he's immediately replaced. I think that you could definitely see a Josh Rosen situation where he is shipped out, or heaven forbid he gets hurt in that first year and they don't see, they fire the coach, they bring in a new regime and they look at this 23 draft class and they go, sorry, buddy, we're shipping you out. I think that's a real possibility. I think Malik's best landing spot is Pittsburgh. 20 at Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh moving up to draft him. Sit behind Trubisky for 1 year and have a stable, positive environment for him to learn and grow in and be integrated. And then, I mean, they have seen Lamar Jackson for going on 5 years now, right? That at least they have somewhat of an idea of what to expect maybe. And I think that if there was a head coach out there that could take a player and nurture a player, I think it is Tomlin. Chase and he was saying Tomlin getting fired. I want that as a Ravens fan. Believe
There's
me.
a better chance Tom Lee gets fired than Tomlin gets fired.
I mean,
And we don't even fire people.
it's
Yeah,
true.
if he keeps trying to offer me Quez Watkins in a trade as we're doing while we're live on air, then I'm gonna fire his ass real quick.
I can ban him from the Discord. I have that power.
You can ban him from the Discord. No, it's true, but I think that that's a genuine concern. I think we've seen him go as early as number 2 to Detroit, and I've seen him go as late as 20 to Pittsburgh. Haven't really seen anything after that from notable talking heads, etc. Lucas says, I think if Pittsburgh takes any quarterback, it's going to move up for them. And yeah, sure, I agree.
And I
Chase
think
says
that's
you're
fair.
fired right now. So
Oh, no.
Chase is drunk with power in our chats. That'll
You think
happen.
You're drunk with
and we
power.
love-
I'm drunk with power.
and we love it. Look, we're gonna come back after a quick clip. We're gonna talk about number 1. Jacob's gonna run down some underdog fantasy stuff for you when we come back. But here's a clip from one of our previous shows with one of our guests. I still can't believe that we had him on the show. We had no business having him on the show, but Billy really did some work. Austin Gale from Pro Football Focus was on the show, and here's him discussing Pro Football Focus grades. Enjoy.
No PFF grade tells you how good a player is.
Mhm.
It's a new advanced metric to describe a player's production within a game, a season, a series of games, etc. PFF charts every player on every play in every game in the NFL and grades every player on a -2 to +2 scale in an effort to create a more predictive metric than yards per carry, touchdown interception ratio, sacks, tackles, because it's just not good enough.
That's friend of the show, Austin Gale, over there from the Tailgate podcast, over there from Pro Football Focus. Jacob, what do you got from Underdog today?
Well, look, NBA playoffs are on. NBA playoffs are my favorite sporting event pretty much of the whole year in terms of betting and props and everything, all in the like. And one of the fun ways to do it is on Underdog. If you don't have a team necessarily, I know a lot of people play fantasy football, probably not even potentially big basketball fans like I am, of course, of the Boston Celtics. So what if you just want to enjoy the games? What if you just want to get in and feel the basketball playoff spirit? You can go play Pick'em on Underdog. You can do fun correlated bets, make these big parlays. If you think one guy on one team is going to score all the points, if you really want to dive into the X's and O's and start guessing, okay, how is this team going to play this matchup? Are they going to play this big off the floor? Do I think Dallas is going to be able to have Davis Bertans out there in defensive lineups, or is he going to be under his total? And you can put all that thought into it, and then you could think you're really smart, and then you can put the under on Jimmy Butler points, and then he actually gets over double his over. And that was my experience as we've been live on air watching Jimmy Butler put up 45 on the Atlanta Hawks. But look, if you want to add some spice to your NBA playoffs, absolutely start out with the NBA pick'ems during the playoffs and use promo code Full Tilt. Tom, what do people get when they use promo code Full Tilt?
It's amazing if you've never played Underdog Fantasy and you have yet to join the rest of the world who's hopping on the online sensation that is sports betting. If you log on to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Full Tilt, you have your deposit matched up to $100. Look, it's a great deal. It's free money. And if you closely follow people like Jacob, you will definitely have a good shot at winning yourself some extra money with that promo code. Guys, the time has come to once again talk about our number one pick, the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast consensus rankings. Yeah, keep it going. I'm dragging it out. Dramatic. Breece Hall, number one on Look, he's an athletic freak, 5'11". Jesus, 217 pounds, turning 21 around when the season starts. 97th percentile 40-yard dash, 97th percentile speed score, 94th percentile burst score. He hits all those metrics that we definitely love. So would have liked to have seen the 3-cone, but I don't think anyone ran the 3-cone.
No one did.
No one did. Look, as a freshman, had a great season. 12 games, 186 attempts, 897 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, but more importantly, 23 receptions as a freshman. Pretty incredible. Then his second year, more 12 games, 279 attempts, 1,500 yards, 23 total touchdowns. Insane. And then last year as a 20-year-old, as a junior, 12 games, 253 carries, 1,472 yards. Again, 23 total touchdowns. And we had 36 receptions for Breece Hall. And look, we had to do it. We're switching it up on the podcast. We have live breaking guests here to help us discuss the number one pick for the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast. This is Chase Vernon.
I'm not going to get this. I'm never going to get this paper written.
You think I talk a lot? Don't even start with me.
We already have 3 people. Now we got Chase sitting here and looking at it.
No, if we look, he's repping Fantasy Intervention shirt. This is the director of content and social media over there at Trophy Smack, the presenting sponsor of the April 28th live draft show. He'll also be on the April 28th live draft show.
Woo.
Chase, we've counted down from 20 this year. We have it figured out, but we didn't count up. I still don't know why we did that last year, but Breece Hall's
It was a rough call.
I'm learning. The number one pick of the consensus Full Tilt Dynasty podcast rankings. How does that sit with you in your chest for Superflex rookie formats?
I mean, it's got to be Kenneth Walker, right? It can't be Breece Hall.
Okay, Chase, it was great having you
last
on.
week, I think, at like number 8.
Absolutely great having you on, but it's time to go.
I'm just kidding. It's Breece Hall. There's no real doubt behind it. The risk is too high for Malik Willis, who would be the other guy in contention for me. I mean, Breece Hall is that dude. You got to be patient with it because I don't think that he ends up landing with a team where he starts, every single snap in year one. I think there's a lot more teams that people are not taking into consideration. I did a drop recently, right, where we had 16 different teams that could take Breece Hall. And I know 16 sounds like a lot, but when you go through it and you sit there and you look at it, big shout out to Jacob, of course. It's like there's 16 teams that could actually take him in the first 2 rounds. And it's not even an exaggeration at that point. Like this is a realistic 16 teams that could end up selecting him.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some better landing spots than other. The mock draft that I just referenced.
The only legitimate landing spot is the Buffalo Bills. I will not accept any other landing spot.
Well, that and that's what I believe.
We must
Ryan
pick
Smith
one reality.
Right, Ryan Smith from CBS, who I mentioned earlier in the
I
pod,
exist on the earth where he's a Bill.
He actually mocked Breece Hall 57 to the Buffalo Bills in the late second round.
I don't think he's lasted at 57.
Good for them.
Hey,
Good for the Bills.
I am just throwing out there what I saw from the same. I'm trying to keep consistency, goddammit, and reference the same mock draft that I did earlier. Billy,
for what it's worth, Peter Schrager also mocked him to the Bills today, but at pick 25.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, round 1 running backs. You said last year that you would hope that they stick to their more analytically sound ways, but here we are. Different year,
you'd
different
hope,
season,
but I'm not a Bills
draft.
fan. I'm just a meager fantasy player.
Fair enough. Obviously, you two did not have Breece Hall ranked number 1. Obviously, that was myself. I believe Tom Lee. I believe Maddie did as well.
Everyone that's not us.
Yeah. Fair enough. Jacob, what is it for you for Breece Hall that really sets him apart from everyone else?
Yeah, so I mentioned like the only reason why I prefer Willis is just that his range of outcomes touches parts that, wow, this is going to sound sexual. Yeah, there are sections of Malik's range of outcomes. I was like touching parts. There are sections of Malik Willis's range of outcomes as a mobile quarterback that no one but a mobile quarterback can hit. So that's really why he ends up at 101 for me. But Breece Hall is clearly, in my opinion, the number one fantasy running back in this class. Walker was the more efficient runner by pretty much any measure in 2021. I certainly wouldn't dispute that. I'd even go so far as to say that if I were running an NFL team and I wanted to draft early down rusher, I would probably rather have Kenneth Walker. But for fantasy, especially in most of our leagues, which are PPR, Breece Hall just has far less concerns. I don't really see any risk factors. He was the clear workhorse at Iowa State all 3 years. It wasn't a 1 year situation. Every year he was involved in the passing game. He has the elite athleticism. He has the workhorse size. He's going to go probably late round 1 or in round 2. There's just no hole. And I think the floor on Breece Hall is about as high as it can possibly be, where at worst case scenario, like he's just a serviceable high-end RB2, low-end RB1 for probably the duration of his rookie contract. Best case scenario, he goes out there, performs like an elite stud, and he's an anchor of your team as a top 5 dynasty running back for years to come. I think that the floor is really, really high, and I think especially with that athletic testing, the ceiling is really high too, and he's going to touch a lot of good parts for your team.
Oh my gosh, Billy, there's definitely, obviously, as Chase had alluded to, very few spots where Breece Hall can end up walking and being a workhorse. Do you see a Javonte Williams type season in his rookie year where people are just dying, waiting for someone like Melvin Gordon to, I don't know, miss games because he stubbed his toe or something? Or do you really think that no matter what, let's say he gets drafted, let's say by the Jets, is Michael Carter gone to you? Like, how do you feel about him being drafted to a team that has a decent
Happy trails,
back?
Mike?
Yeah. You're waiting.
I mean, if he went to the Jets, Mike, I'm a Michael Carter fan. I like Michael Carter. If he went to the Jets, Michael Carter is in the trash.
On a jet plane, don't know when he'll be back again.
Jacob's ability to do like one line beyond the part of the song that references it, unbelievable. No, like I like Breece Hall, obviously. Breece Hall reminds me a lot of, was it the Wonder Twins, the By Our Powers Combined? If all the other RBs in this draft did that, you just get Breece Hall. Like, I don't understand the reason.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, like I don't get why we want to put anyone else here in terms of the RB position. Like, Breece Hall's clearly been the best player on Iowa State. It definitely wasn't Brock Purdy. He destroyed Texas Tech every time they played. I don't know what my deal is with taking shots at quarterbacks that don't matter, but besides the point,
it's becoming a brand.
Breece Hall hasn't not scored a rushing touchdown in a game since December 28th of 2019, his freshman year. Like, he's a statistical monster, and every time he touches the ball, like, he was the player on Iowa State the last couple of years. So it's so easy to take him here. Like, the one concern is he got used like crazy in college. Like, he was averaging 20 attempts per game every year he was at Iowa State, which is great. You want to see that, but at the same time, you kind of hope he saves some of those mileage. Like, all this is really good. Breece Hall's a phenomenal player. His rush, like, just his pure athletic metrics put him in elite categories. So I think there's so much good to say about Breece Hall. I'll cede the rest of my time to our spontaneous guest, Chase, over here. If you want to say anything else about Jacob's takes on Malik Willis.
Chase,
I was halfway kidding. Like, I ended up walking downstairs. I came back up and I had an invite to the show. And I'm like,
I had to do it. Look,
the link.
The best part. That's the best part to doing shows like this is the spontaneity. Look, Chase, if you had to target one thing in Breece Hall's game, one thing that would absolutely throw up an immediate red flag, right? You're on Tinder, you're looking through the profile, you're like, man, this lines up. Like, everything is just lining up, and you get to that bottom line giant red flag, you're swiping left. What would it be for Breece Hall?
Does he have one? I mean, Breece Hall, like, it's so fun. I mean, maybe because people are comparing him to Tony Pollard, that's probably the biggest red flag. Like, I got the
that's
other
far
day.
too flattering. I know that I said he has a floor of low RB1 and a ceiling of top 5, but Tony Pollard, I mean, come on. I don't know
It's
why we
crazy.
compare
I
him to
even
the
had a
best
guy
running back in
coming
the
at me.
NFL.
I even had a
my
guy coming at
God.
me today over and over and over again. And he's like, well, prove to me that he's not Tony Pollard. Prove to me that it's not Tony Pollard. Like, I'm like,
It's
dude,
such
like,
a
DNA
I
test.
have,
You want him to swab his nostril?
dude, the guy's going to be at least a very good player in the NFL, and he's going to see touches over his first few years. He could end up, pulling a Cam Akers type thing where he'll be in the NFL for like 4 years, and then he'll end up, dissipating into thin air. Big shout out to Jacob over there. But no,
Well, I do think that if Breece Hall tears his Achilles, that would substantially change his outlook. I definitely think that's a risk factor.
yeah, it's definitely
Let's
a
not
risk.
even put that in the universe.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, honestly, like, there's no way that Breece Hall isn't going to be, somewhat valuable. My biggest concern that he does end up in some sort of timeshare, but he's never been in timeshare his entire career, so I don't think there's a red flag for him.
That's fair.
Like, we talk about him ending up in a timeshare year one, but the timeshares that he could end up in year one, he will not be in for the rest of his career. I mean, Tampa Bay is an option. The Saints are an option. Hell, the Cowboys are an option.
He could be Tony Pollard.
He could. If Tony
Pollard to Tony Pollard.
So I really think the Cowboys wait till 2023 to draft a running back, but like Bijan Robinson, somebody along those lines.
How perfect would that be?
But I like they could draft him this year, so he spends a year, behind the pending free agent and the overpaid running back. It's just a Jerry Jones thing. It's not a an organizational dependency thing. It's like, oh, I love Breece Hall. I need to get him on my team. Let's throw him, on the roster as well, and let's spend way too much money on.
You
running
can never
back.
count anything out with the Cowboys.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can never count. Yeah,
You can
exactly.
never 100% count out anything with the Cowboys.
My dark horse team is actually David Montgomery, or the Bears.
Oh, I love
with
that.
David Montgomery.
Get Montgomery out of my
What a
life.
rough
Love that.
choice by the Bears.
Big
Go.
win for the brand on my end there.
If he falls to them
Come on.
and he takes over for that, and he has Khalil Herbert backing him up, it's like just a dependable back on certain downs.
Career
And he's from
backup
the
Khalil
Midwest,
Herbert.
went to Iowa State, same
No,
as
I
David
agree.
What a
Montgomery.
rough pick for the Bears.
I think that would.
He's
send,
already taken
kind of
over
the
for
show
David
Steven
Montgomery.
Johnson.
Breece Hall has always been an upgrade over David Montgomery on David Montgomery's team.
Yeah, and they've already watched the tape. They've already spent a bunch of time scouting, on that team. But the biggest thing is like, hey, like they could improve the line. They could draft wide receivers, but there's a chance that there's a huge gap in what they have in the rankings for the offensive line at that pick. And there's also a huge gap in what they have for the wide receivers that could be gone if teams draft wide receivers too heavily if he falls in the second round. So if the Bears decide to protect Justin Fields, like they could do it through the running game and just take the ball out of his hands to protect him over the next few years. Because as we've seen, like they're talking about how they need to protect, Justin Fields, and Justin Fields could end up getting beat up, and Justin Fields should request a trade in his sophomore year. It makes no sense, but this is one way they could avoid pretty much all of that. It's just by going run heavy for 1 year, which, by the way, is how the Colts approached things when they had Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor over there.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? Everyone see the Justin Fields wants to be traded stuff that was popping up on the timeline for like 2 days earlier.
Well, they were saying he should be traded.
Right. It just absolutely lunacy. It is that time of the year. But guys, we're at an hour and 20. Shout out to our number one consensus pick for the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast consensus rankings, Breece Hall. And, strong shout out to the contender coming up in 2 there, Malik Willis. Chase, very happy to have had you pop in here out of nowhere. There's few things I appreciate more out of nowhere than the Randy Orton RKOs, but a Chase Vernon pop in on a live broadcast is definitely right up there with them. Why don't you let them know what you have going on? Because it's a lot these days. And what do you have coming down over the next week or so?
You know what? I just want to let everybody know. I'm going to skip all the other stuff that I have going on. And I'm going to let everybody know that we're going to be doing a live Twitter rooms. I'm going to set up the room here either tomorrow morning or so. Make sure you go follow me over the FF_intervention to go join the Twitter rooms on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. So if you want to go, speak in that, if you guys want to go ask some questions, go join us.
Ooh.
And we love to have everybody in there. So Thursday night at like 8:30, maybe 9, somewhere in that range.
Somewhere.
Just follow me over there on Twitter at FF_intervention to get the update.
That and so much more coming from Chase. Just You're always on something, man. It's honestly great. Billy, what about yourself, sir?
Yeah, I decided I needed a new hobby because football is out of season. So I decided to do more football, and now I'm just running random analytics on my on my Twitter. So if you want to go find some pretty graphs of random stuff with no rhyme or reason, go check it out.
I love that.
I'm letting y'all make your decisions, baby. I'm just giving y'all data.
That's right. He's not leading them in any one way just so he can, have a backup plan for when people come at him. Jacob, I know you, sir, you announced earlier today the pods that you're going to be on. What else do you got?
Yeah, so I'll be on with Chase tomorrow night. No Shane. Shane's off doing other things. We'll be podcasting a little bit earlier because the Celtics game is at 6 Eastern. I don't understand how to do times. I live on the West Coast. Whatever it is, the Celtics game is tomorrow night, and I did not want to podcast during the fourth quarter. So we convinced Chase to podcast instead in the middle. So I'll be podcasting at 8 Eastern time from the middle of the second quarter into the third. We will be stopping precisely at 1 hour. If Chase is in the middle of the sentence, I'll just leave the show to watch the Celtics game. And you'll probably get to watch me live tilt some Kyrie Irving fadeaways while on the show because I will have it on split screen. But we'll be talking draft props, betting, and we're going to do a underdog rookies and sophomores draft. So that'll be fun. Definitely tune into that one. And then on Saturday, I'll be doing a pre-draft show, or Sunday, sorry, I'll be doing a pre-draft show on the Mind of Mansion with, of course, Fantasy Mansion, Matt Kelly. So that'll be fun. And then otherwise, I'm wrapping up my clinic term. So I'm not doing any fantasy written content right now. I'm trying to wrap up a paper. I got to close out all my files. But as soon as the draft stops, I will be doing my rookie guide with Drew Ozenchuk. We're collaborating on the Bulletproof Rookie Guide. So that'll be out shortly after the draft. Excited for that. And then definitely going to have plenty of content in May and June as we get into official best ball season.
100%. Of course, you can ride into best ball season with us at Full Tilt via Underdog Fantasy. And of course, you can always catch me on the timeline, bringing the positivity and everything that you need your way. And I am going to remind everyone again, just so I can say we did it early and we did it at the end. You need to be in on the Saquon Barkley signed jersey giveaway. Super easy to do. Go rate, subscribe, send a picture to the DM in comments. Doesn't matter. You'll get entered for that. We're giving that away April 28th live. Also, thanks to Trophy Smack. Shout out Trophy Smack. We'll have a custom Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Championship belt to give away that we're giving away to the best comment. Chase is going to pull one up. That's right. One of those bad boys. It will be Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast custom. You're going to want to get a hold of that. We're taking care of the shipping, right? It's heavy, Chase. I mean, for the people, that's no gimmick, right? So we're paying for that. You don't got to worry about that. We're paying the shipping cost to you. Best comment of the night wins the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast custom championship belt. You're going to want to be there for this show. Chase is on the show. We have so many other people popping in. We have Mark Shue live reporting for us at the NFL draft in Vegas. He's going to be popping into the stream with live breaking news. It's going to be a great time. Don't miss it. No fantasy walkabout on Saturday. Tuesday next week, the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast, we're wrapping up with prop bets and flag plant episodes. It's going to be a great time. So catch in with us. Shout out to Chase. Shout out to Jacob. Shout out to Billy. We love and appreciate every single one of you guys. And I always want to remember to keep things clean on the timeline. Be kind to one another. Don't be a giant piece of shit on the internet. Remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose. And your best days, well, they're always spent tilting. Good night, everybody.
Take care.